Do you spend a ton of time training your SDRs only to find that they make the same mistake over and over again, take months to ramp, and have trouble making quota? Yoda AI by RingDNA delivers AI-powered conversation guidance so that every rep can sell like your top performer. In real time, deliver talking points that help reps overcome sales objections, stay on message, and beat the competition. You'll never have to endlessly repeat sales advice to reps again. It's easy to set up, easy to customize, and comes with out-of-the-box coaching best practices. Turn your team into a revenue-driving machine today with Yoda AI by RingDNA. To learn more, visit ringdna.com/Yoda. That's ringdna.com/YODA.
You need something to empower the rep to be effective at the engagement, because once a lead is qualified, you need to give them the tools to engage effectively, and CRMs aren't really good at engagement. They're great at reporting, and that's why there's this plethora of sales and outreach technology that adds to the CRM. But ultimately, I think it's a philosophical change, and here's the philosophy. I think that sales is a four-letter word. Nobody wants to sell, and nobody wants to buy from a salesman.
Hi, friends. Welcome to the Sales Enablement Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Paul. That was Jon Ferrara. Jon's the founder and CEO of Nimble, the social sales and marketing CRM for individuals and teams. And hey, I'll be honest, I love talking with Jon. Jon's one of the founders of CRM as we know it. In fact, for many of us, the first exposure we had to any form of Salesforce automation was with Goldmine, a product created by Jon. Jon understands at a level that most of us don't the value you get from being connected, which is something I talk about often on the show. And Jon reminds us in this conversation of his 5 F's at the heart of connection: family, friends, food, fun, and fellowship. We also dig into the state of sales today. What's not working, and what do we need to do to move the profession forward? And what are the core values that sellers need to possess to be effective and successful in their careers? We get into all of that and much, much more. Before we get to Jon, though, I want to remind you to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to it. And if you subscribe, we'd certainly appreciate it if you could also give us your feedback about how we're doing in the form of a review. So thank you. All right, let's jump into it. Jon, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Andy. It's a pleasure to be back here with you and your fine audience.
A third time repeat offender, though it's been a while since the last time. It's been 4 years or something like that. It didn't seem like it was that long, but...
Well, time flies when you're eating flies.
Yeah, time flies when you're eating flies, yeah. So, yeah, we're 13, 14 months into the pandemic. How has Nimble fared during that time?
Well, it's interesting about times of change. Opportunities are created. I think that there's, just like we started Goldmine in the recession of the late 80s. And so we started in 1989, and there was a recession that was happening back then. And I think that in times of change, people seek tools and techniques to help them to succeed. And what thing isn't more precious than the connections and the contacts that you've built over your lifetime? Because ultimately, they're the ones that will help you to achieve the things that you want to achieve. Mm-hmm. And I think we all struggle with managing our connections. I think that that they're critical to your success. So amazing! It's been our best year ever, and I just feel good about helping all those people during this time of change.
And do you think probably some of that was driven by the change to work from anywhere, work from home?
Of course. I mean, I think that as you become more digital, that you need to be able to manage your connections more effectively. And when we're all sort of remote and distance, I think it's harder to maintain those connections. I think as humans, we crave those interactions, and so I think you need to work a little bit harder in our remote world.
Now, are you guys still remote? Or are you planning on coming back to the office, or what's happening with you?
We're remote, and We've been remote since February. And so I sent my team home as soon as I saw what I saw. I mean, I think it was clear and plain that in February that this was going to be something significant.
Right.
And I didn't want to endanger any of our team. And the beautiful thing about being a SaaS company is that you already are all digital.
Right.
So I was able to have that freedom to give our team the ability to work remotely. And we're still working remotely. And I foresee that we will work remotely at least until everybody's vaccinated.
Right. Have you had that chance?
You know what? I have my appointment today.
Oh, okay.
How about you?
Yeah, I'm old. I got vaccinated a month or so ago. Yeah, so I'm through both shots.
And which one did you get?
I got Moderna.
Oh, nice.
First one, nothing. Second one, I was good till about 5 hours after the shot. Then I was just so tired and so fatigued. I just basically spent a day and a half reading and watching stuff on my iPad, because that's about all I was good for at that point. But then I was fine after that. So
good.
Yeah, I think having that reaction, actually made you feel a little better. Like, yeah, I didn't get a placebo. I actually got the real thing. My body's reacting to it.
Yeah, that's a good sign, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, I encourage everybody, make sure you get vaccinated. So one of the things I want to ask you about is I mean, you founded Goldmine. You're basically one of the first CRM systems that are out there. So you're one of the fathers of the industry, if you mind me saying that.
That's right.
What do you see the future of CRM being?
Well, ultimately, I think that most people don't really understand what a CRM is or what it should be used for, and I think that's the biggest problem with CRM. So let's try to define it a little bit.
Sure.
So a CRM is a database that you put things in and you get things out, and it should have a purpose. Most people use the CRM database to manage the cycle of prospects and leads and turn them into customers. And they use market automation in conjunction with that to lead qualify them and then hand them off to the sales reps and engage with them. But the basic nature of CRM really was founded with the Rolodex, if you will, and then evolved into the 6x9 index card methodology of recalling people and following up with them. And that evolved into a day timer, and that evolved into products like Goldmine and Act. So really, CRM stands for customer relationship management, and the center of that is relationships, and those are about contacts. And so the heart of CRM, the birth of CRM, was contact management with Goldmine and Act, where Act was designed to manage tasks and notes for an individual person's contacts, and Goldmine really pioneered integrating contacts for a team, not just salespeople, but everybody in the company, integrating email, contact, and calendar, and sales and market automation. So we sort of pioneered Outlook and Salesforce before either existed. But what happened was we essentially were the place people lived. Goldmine was the place people lived because everybody in the company lived where the contacts were, and they engaged and managed them through that. When Outlook was introduced, Outlook became the place of interaction, of engagement, and Goldmine was more of the place of management of the flow of the leads and the reporting and the automation of the nurture marketing, because there was no market automation back then. We trademarked automated processes, which enabled you to do actions based on triggers, if this and that, for people and companies. So you could take leads, put them on a track, nurture them. And so I think that Siebel and then Salesforce were created because they didn't want people to be using their own personal Goldmines and Acts to manage the contacts. They wanted to command and control the database. And really that evolved into what we know of as enterprise CRM today, whether you're talking about Dynamics or Salesforce or any of the derivatives thereof. So most CRMs today are designed for management and reporting as opposed to engagement and contacts. And I think that's where we got lost, is that CRMs really aren't good at contact management, or even SFA. SFA is the
Salesforce
tools that
automation,
salespeople
right.
need to engage. And that's why when you buy a CRM like Salesforce or Dynamics, you have to go out and buy sales intelligence software like LinkedIn Sales Navigator or DiscoverOrg. And because salespeople need to know who the leads are and what the companies are about in order to effectively engage. Then they need engagement tools, which is like SalesLoft or Outreach.io or
Ring
all the
DNA.
derivatives thereof. And Ring DNA.
Yes.
And so basically SFA is critical. It's like the rifle and the map is the sales intelligence. So if you think about the analogy of a battle, the market automation system is the bomber that bombs the field that softens the ground. And then you have to put boots on the ground in order to win a war. And soldiers need maps and rifles. And so that's what sales intelligence and the outreach software is all about. And so I think that the problem is that it's too costly and complex to build that sales technology stack for the average company. Mm-hmm. And so I think the future of CRM is going to be a platform that ideally works for you by building itself and works with you where you work. Because the biggest cause of failure of CRM is lack of use. Right. They call it Salesforce because you have to force salespeople to use it. No CRM analyst that I know actually uses a CRM. They use contact managers because that's the heart of connecting. And so I think that the CRM fails because you have to go to it to use it, and you work for it by Googling people before you go to a meeting, and then you log that stuff in the CRM. Then you go and engage wherever you can. Right. That's email and social and phone, and then you go log that. And so I think that the CRM is a static thing that's over there that you got to basically beat people to use. I think it should be over here, working with me like a little nudge on my shoulder, telling me, this is who Andy is. This is who Ring DNA is. This is the last time you spoke. These are the people that on your team that have spoken to them. This is what's going to happen. This is what's happening in their lives. So that when we do engage, I have the context and insights that I need to be effective in the engagement. But most importantly, the basics, the follow-up and follow-through. Log in the next task, log in the note, which is critical to the next steps of the contact. And if you don't have a next step scheduled, then basically that contact is lost. Right. And people don't do it because they have to go to the CRM to do it. So I think your CRM should live with you everywhere you're working and work for you by giving you the information you need. So you have to Google them. Ideally, you Nimble them.
Right. Good plug. I like that. I mean, what you're describing, though, is really interesting. Is that you started with the premise of connections and developing your network, having the network effect. You said you bring these connections through your career, the things that people that you can do something for, they can do something for you. Together, you can be better. Yeah. And it sort of got replaced by a command and control infrastructure.
Yes.
And I think people have lost this notion in sales. A lot of people have about the value of their personal network.
And if you think about it, back in the Goldmine days, every sales rep had a copy of Goldmine that they used, no matter what they had to use at their office. Yeah. And you should take that copy everywhere you go. And I call that your personal CRM. So I think that the rise of personal CRM is upon us, especially when LinkedIn locks your contacts in their platform and won't really let you effectively export them. Right. You can't export the emails. And if you don't have the emails for people, you can't build the connections for people. You can export their name, their title, and their company name, which is pretty much useless unless you have something intelligence that can basically index and map all that stuff. Yeah. And so your contacts are siloed and locked away today. I think you need to free them up and put them in something and then take them with you wherever you go, because you're going to be hired based off your brand and your network. They're your net worth. And you should be nurturing that every day and taking it with you and applying it to whatever thing that you're engaging in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've read some of Keith Ferrazzi's books. He talks about that, right? The value of the network in your life. If anybody haven't read Never Eat Lunch Alone, it's a great book that talks about this.
I love Keith's energy.
Yeah. But I mean, it's exactly what you're talking about here is this, having your personal CRM, that's your personal network and contacts. That's not tied to the company. I mean, certainly you can use them for your work, but they also assets that you developed.
Yeah. Or if you are a company and you're looking to empower your customer-facing business team members, not just your salespeople, but everybody in the company, then get a CRM that is really about contacts and connections and conversations, about incorporating your whole team. And this is the problem, Andy. Today, at a company, your contacts are siloed in a bunch of places. So every company has to make a choice, G Suite or Google Workplace, whatever they call it these days, and Microsoft 365. So that's your email productivity platform that gives you email, contacts, and calendar. On top of that, you have to basically pick sales, marketing, customer service, and accounting software, at the very least, marketing and accounting, right? And so each of those platforms has a separate contact database, including Office and G Suite, because every single user in Google Workplace and Microsoft 365 has a separate contact database, and those contacts aren't linked to the email and calendar that you're sending. So you don't have a team relationship manager in your company. That's critical. That's what people loved about Goldline, and I think that's really what's missing in today's CRMs, because CRM isn't used by everybody in the company because it's cost prohibitive, plus it's too big and complex. You don't want to spend $100 per person per month for everybody to have access to a contact database. You should use something like Nimble, which is a fraction of that cost and gives everybody access, will unify the contacts from all the separate siloed contact platforms, including Google Workplace, Microsoft 365, and the sales, marketing, customer service, and accounting apps that you use. But then it'll unify that and enrich those contacts with people and company data so that no matter who engages, they have the context and insights they need to engage, and then works in those apps. So with our browser plugin, you could bring up Nimble within QuickBooks or MailChimp or whatever you're using. In fact, we have customers that use Nimble in conjunction with Salesforce and HubSpot CRM and even Dynamics CRM.
So what's the use case there?
SFA and sales intelligence and team contact management. So SFA is you don't want to have to go out and buy LinkedIn, Outreach.io, RingDNA, or SalesLoft, which is $100 per rep per month or so. And then you don't want to go out and buy DiscoverOrg or LinkedIn Sales Navigator, which is $100 per rep per month. So getting the sales intelligence and the engagement capabilities. Now, no, Nimble doesn't have the depth and breadth that dedicated packages like RingDNA and SalesLoft and Outreach.io have, but most people don't need that. In fact, most sales reps don't even run their outreach software. There's a sales administrator that actually sets it up and runs it, and so I think it should be simpler and more nimble, if you will.
Yeah, well, it's interesting about the space though, is it seems like there's always so many new entrants into the space. I mean, that's the thing that always sort of strikes me every time talking to new people, or when we used to go to shows, it's like there's yet another CRM offering. Is it because they're trying to address this sweet spot that you're talking about? They see that's what they see as the opportunity?
I really don't see many people in our space. First off, nobody has something like Nimble Prospector, which essentially
I guess that's done more generally, SMB CRM systems.
Sure. But most of those are really more simpler versions of Salesforce. So like Pipedrive, for example, Zoho, for example. Zoho is a derivative of the open source software, vTiger, that was a copy of Salesforce that eventually became Sugar CRM and Zoho CRM. And so all of these things are just copies of Siebel and Salesforce, lower cost versions. And I think it's the wrong philosophy. I think that, yes, a company needs a CRM to manage leads and prospects and turn them into customers and report on the activities that go into those leads and prospects against the results that you get. But at the same time, and that's management reporting lead flow, you need something to empower the rep to be effective at the engagement. Because once a lead is qualified, you need to give them the tools to engage effectively. And CRMs aren't really good at engagement. They're great at reporting, but they're really poor at engagement. And that's why there's this plethora of sales and outreach technology that adds to the CRM. But ultimately, I think it's a philosophical change. And here's the philosophy. I think that sales is a four-letter word, Andy. Nobody wants to sell, and nobody wants to buy from a sales room. I think that mentality really happened as a result of history. And I'm going to give you the history real quick because I think it's important to understand history in order to understand the present and predict the future.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that because I did want to ask you about that because I think that, quite frankly, I'm sort of tired of people pointing the fingers at salespeople.
Yeah.
And I wanted to sort of dig into why I think that is the case, and perhaps we should be pointing the fingers in a different direction. But go ahead.
Okay. So 100 years ago, we all lived in a small town. Agree?
Yep.
And your brand was built on the promises that you make and the experience that you deliver. And if you could align those two, you could build a gold mine. I know. I did.
You did, right?
So the thing is that as manufacturing started happening in city, mass manufacturing, people moved from those small villages into the cities to get those jobs. And we started manufacturing a lot of stuff that we couldn't really consume or use, like brushes. So we hired door-to-door salespeople, Fuller Brush Man, to go knock on the doors and sell those brushes. So we were pushing product to customers, and that wasn't enough to sell the brushes. So we used madman marketing to drive those eyeballs into stores where they could basically be sold. And I think that evolved into the 80s. Bag 'em and tag 'em, enterprise, Oracle sales reps who would do anything to basically get the order. And I think that social media has changed the way that we work, play, buy, and sell, has changed the expectation of customers to companies and companies to customers. And essentially, I think that service is the new sales, that the philosophy of I'm not here to make as much money as I can from you, but I'm here to help you grow. And if I do that, you will not only come back and buy from me, but you'll drag your friends with them, with you, and refer business to me. And so I think that the philosophical change is I'm not here to basically bag and tag you. I'm here to serve you and help you grow. And by doing so, I myself grow.
I agree with that 100%. And so, but here's the conundrum. It's not like this is a new conversation, right? It's
It's relatively new over the past 5 or 10 years, for sure.
Well, but the idea of buyer-centric selling or customer-centric selling, people started socializing that sort of 15, 20 years ago. But it's how do we get to the point of making this change happen? I mean, what has to happen? I mean, because I sense. I mean, you've been at the forefront of this profession for decades, and there's a sense I get from all the conversations I have that there's this pent-up frustration among sellers, especially in the B2B space, that the status quo isn't working for them, and so something has to change.
Here's where I think we can apply some change.
Right.
Follow the money. How are sales reps commissioned? They get paid on the sale. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Imagine, and I used to be a systems engineer. A systems engineer is the technology person that is the pre and post sales assistant, if you will, that essentially works with the customer to help them make a buying decision by helping them implement the technology. And then once it's sold, helps that technology work and keeps them as a customer. I didn't get commission. The sales rep would basically show me $300,000 commission checks on the flight home from meetings that I was part of. How'd that make me feel?
I know exactly how it made you feel.
Okay. So I think that if companies commissioned the team based off customer retention and success, that would change the focus of bagging and tagging customers and getting the sale as to aligning the customer's needs to the company's products and making sure that those needs are fulfilled and met successfully over time.
So commission the team, not just the individual.
Commission the team, not on the sale, but on the retention.
Okay.
On customer success. Create some measurements in there and essentially say, okay, we sold the customer, but they actually implemented the software and they're deriving some success and we've kept them for some period of time.
Right. Well, it's certainly an acknowledgement of the fact that sales is not really a solo sport. It is a team sport, certainly in the way it sounds like you practice it. And
it is. And the problem is the systems are designed for just the sales one. Now, we're evolving where sales, marketing, and support are becoming part of a cohesive whole, right? Within the past 5 years, You've seen companies like Zendesk buy Base CRM and marketing platforms like HubSpot add sales and customer support. And that's getting us to the point where there is a singular system for marketing, sales, and support.
Right.
And I think that's getting us towards making them more of a cohesive team. But I think you need to change some of maybe the philosophy and the commission structure as well. And this all really gets back to the philosophy of Nimble, that it's not really, CRM shouldn't just be for salespeople, for prospects and leads. It should be a relationship manager, a contact platform for the whole company, and the philosophy behind it, that it's really about connections and relationships over time, as opposed to a number that you basically go and close and kill.
Well, interesting about connection and relationships, there's and I go to my soapbox a little bit about this, but I mean, there's this cohort of thought leaders in sales these days that say, relationships, you don't need those in sales. I mean, connections, you don't need to be likable. I mean, it's just, it's all about business.
Yeah, I don't agree, because I from my experience, it's the relationships that last. Mm-hmm. You don't talk about the deal that you did together or the thing that you sold them. You talk about what I call the 5 F's of life: family, friend, food, fun, and fellowships. These are the softer connections that maintain a connection over time. And these are the things that bond and people and get you over the humps of late deliveries, pricing dispersion, right, exactly, whatever it is. And so I know the guys that basically say that relationships don't matter. And, my recommendation is look at them. What kind of people are they? I don't know. I'm a relationship guy. I always will be. And I teach it.
Well, I find the irony is that some of the people who are strongest advocates for that point of view about relationships don't matter actually are quite good at it. So
that's sales.
Yeah. I mean, they are relationship people. It's just, somebody think they need to say something new, and it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, well, I think it always helps if you're a thought leader and you go contrary and you jab, right? Because it makes you stand out. And I understand the positioning. It's fine.
Yeah. So I want to follow up on something you said before about, because I think for me, sort of an analogy I use is that you were talking about manufacturing, people migrating from rural America to the cities. I mean, at the start of World War II, or even before the start, at the time of the Great Depression, over 50% of the U.S.'s GDP was derived from agriculture. Think about that. Now it's less than 5%, I think. So to your point, the huge transformation sort of in the 20s, 30s, 40s. I think that sales managers should look at sellers as sort of a product that they're responsible for building. And they hire these people, they train them, they coach them, they manage them. If they're not acting in a way that is useful for buyers, or buyers are put off by their behavior, everybody wants to point the finger at the seller, but they're just sort of doing what they were trained to do. I mean, I don't think that behavior is natural human behavior, right? So part of the focus, I think, or a large part of the focus that we're missing in sales these days is we're really doing nothing to enable, or very little to enable, frontline managers and sales leaders in the skills that they need to produce the sellers that can perform the way that they want.
Yeah, 100%. I think that it all sort of rolls off the top. The attitude, the philosophy of a company, of a team, and it reflects on who they engage with, whether they're selling to customers or whether they're doing business with other vendors. I could tell you that back in the day when Ballmer ran Microsoft, it was a different philosophy of the company. They ate their children, and I think it affected them as a company. And for 20 years, their stock price, I think, was $20 or something like that. Like
hardly moved.
The 20 over 20. Yeah. And Satya Nadella came in, and they weren't even a cloud company. And this wasn't that long ago. And he led from the heart. In fact, he wrote a book on empathy. empathy to not just the customer, but if you think about it, there's a constituency around your business. You should be building your business like it's a sustainable garden. And you want to put in the garden the things that are going to attract the other things that helps build a self-sustaining life cycle. And so at Nimble, we connect to editors, analysts, bloggers, influencers, third-party developers, investors, advisors, and prospects and customers, and their influencers as well. So that's an entire constituency. And when you connect with Nimble, you don't just connect with Jon Ferrara, you connect with a whole team of people that are part of that process. And we all use a central contact platform to manage those connections and relationships in the cycle. And we do it from our heart because we actually like the people that we do business with, that we connect to, people like you, Andy. And so Satya leads his company from his heart with empathy towards helping his constituency grow. And because of it, Microsoft has seen tremendous growth. And I can tell you, as a tight business partner with Microsoft, by the way, signed a global resale agreement with Nimble. They're globally selling us as a simple CRM for Office 365. They basically sunsetted their simple CRM Outlook Customer Manager and transitioned the 200,000 customers to us. So we basically are sold by Microsoft with Office 365 as a baby step to Dynamics for ones that grow into there. And so that's a philosophical change. Back in the old days, they would not have done that. And so I think that is a good example of a change in philosophy that I think has to be taught to other companies and to other leaders, and they need to empower their team to do that. Because if a sales rep actually recommends a competing product, I think there's a high possibility that customer will recommend that company and that salesperson because they serve their needs.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you're not always the answer to every problem. And I think that's...
No.
I think I even saw a quote from Nadella about that, and something he wrote is that was one of the changes in philosophy, is that the sales team was no longer going in assuming that they were the answer to the problems they had. Because they assumed they knew what the problem was going in, and they didn't even bother doing the exploration they needed to find out exactly what the scope of the problem was and what the buyer wanted to achieve.
And the other thing, Andy, I think that this whole automation of the sales process is getting a little bit overdone. So I don't know what your inbox looks like, but every day I get these automated emails. Oh, hey, Jon, I'm not sure if you saw my last email, but I just want to let you know that I'm still here. Yeah, I'm still here sending you this automated sequence, and I really want you to actually reply to me. And imagine if they used a more human approach and walked in my digital footprint and got to know who I am and what my business was about, and then reached out with a personalized outreach that made me feel like they saw me, knew me, and had a clear value add that they wanted to present to me. I'll tell you what, I got an email the other day from a vendor, and I replied back to it, and I basically told the sales rep, look, this sounds interesting, connect me with your CEO. I got an email back in an hour, and he said, "Here's my CEO's email," and we booked a meeting. And I had that call yesterday, and we basically are starting a biz dev relationship together. And that's the power of clarity in communication.
Or what did he or she say to you that caught your attention?
They essentially said that we see that you are building a reseller channel, and that we have a platform that empowers people to manage their reseller channel at scale. And we'd love to connect to learn more about your channel and see if there's a way we could work together to make it grow. And so that was a personalized outreach, and it wasn't absolutely personal. Like, they didn't go into my Facebook and say, "I saw you go to Spain last week, and isn't Spain great?" I think that might be a little bit too personal.
In your case, it would have been your barbecue. what you're grilling. If he was on your Facebook, Jon, those steaks look great, or ribs, or whatever. I mean, that's why I know Jon through Facebook. Is you
knew me through my meat. But that's the 5 F's of life, Andy: family, friend, food, fun, and fellowship. These are the things that connect us, that maintain those connections over time. like Brent Leary, right? Brent Leary and I are old friends. He's a serum thought leader, and but we connect on the things that we dig, like the Rams.
The Rams. Yeah, football. You know, they got the new stadium opening this year, right?
They do. I don't know if there'll be actually people in it, although I'm buying Dodger tickets today. It's opening day.
You're going to go to opening day?
No.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to some game. I want to see the San Diego, the Padres against the Dodgers. I think those are two of the best teams in baseball, and it's going to be fun watching them go at it together.
Yeah, actually, the last game I saw was Dodgers Padres down Petco Park 2019 season. But
oh, nice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's always a crazy crowd full of Dodger fans. So, yeah, Padres could be good this year. Not getting off the path, but yeah, they've been investing money to try to compete with the Dodgers. So,
yeah, it's impressive.
We'll see. Well, John, let's leave it at that. That was good.
All right.
If people want to connect with you, actually, I had one more question because I want to follow up on that last thing. So, of the outreach that comes into you, that you're paying attention, what's sort of the percentage between LinkedIn and your email? Because in the last year, I'm probably every day, probably 40% of my inbound messages are LinkedIn.
Yeah. So can you read this number here of the unread emails?
Tell the audience exactly what that number is.
It's my unread emails are 520,825. So if you try to reach out to me on email, that's going to be hard.
Yeah.
So I think that these two questions that you just asked blend together, because you asked me how can people get a hold of me, and they asked about what do I see and respond to versus LinkedIn and email. And I'd say that LinkedIn is a place where people kind of reach out to me to sell me stuff a lot of times.
Right. Me too.
More so now than ever. And I think that your brand and your network are your net worth, and that you need to stand out. So Google yourself today. Do you show up on the first page? If you don't, you need to. Here's a simple way to do so. Go build a Wikipedia page on yourself. It's free, it's easy, but to make it work, you need to cite external citations that basically support whatever you say about yourself and your company. Put a nice avatar picture in there. Go and create an identity in all the places where your prospects, your customers, and their influencers as well have conversations in and around the areas of expertise of your products and services and your passions in life. Because all of these are ways that people will see you. And if you're not being seen, if you're not top of mind, if you haven't become a trusted advisor to your prospect customers and their influencers, then you're going to be out of sight, and out of sight is out of mind, and out of mind is out of money, honey, according to Mae West. And so how do you stay top of mind today is you give your knowledge away. Right. You've forgotten more about your products and services and your customers will ever know in your life. And if you can't write posts, then curate. And that's a great way to connect with other influencers as well. And so if you want to get a hold of me, Google me, Jon, Jon Ferrara, Ferrara, and connect with me on whatever channel is most comfortable for you. And if you can't figure that out, my email is jon@nimble.com. Come at me. Come on. Tell me what's going on in your life and how I might be able to blow some wind in your sails. Because one of the things that I've derived for my purpose in life is I'm on this planet to grow my soul. And I do that best by helping other people grow theirs. And that's why I built Goldmine. That's why I build Nimble, because I'm here to power you in your dreams. And I think the best way to do that is by helping you build the connections that you need to help you get to where you want to go in life.
Perfect. Love it. Jon, as always, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Always great to connect with you.
Okay, friends, that's it for this episode. First of all, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen. As always, I'm so grateful for your support of the show. And I want to thank my friend Jon Ferrara for sharing his wisdom with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to this podcast, Sales Enablement with Andy Paul, on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you could also leave us a rating or a review and let us know how we're doing, well, we'd appreciate that. You can do all that on your phone in less than a minute as soon as this episode is over. So thank you for your help. And as always, thank you so much for investing your time with me today. Until next time, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone. Ever wish you could coach like you've listened to every sales call without actually having to listen to every sales call? Conversation AI from RingDNA uses the power of artificial intelligence to help busy sales managers know exactly where to focus their coaching efforts. Learn which talking points are working and which are falling flat, ramp new reps faster, and help your entire team master the art of conversation. Unlock your team's full potential with the power of AI. Learn more at ringdna.com/CAI. That's ringdna.com/CAI.